Dusty Springfield is the greatest white soul singer of all time.
She was a show business character.
Billy Ray was a preacher's son, and when his daddy would visit, he'd come along.
She was a very distinguished mezzo-soprano.
Very emotional, but also very sultry. You know, there was only one Dusty.
Then he looked into my eyes. Lord knows to my surprise, the only one who could ever reach me was the son of a preacher man. The only boy who could ever teach me was the son of a preacher man. Yes, he was. He was. Yes, he was.
Dusty Springfield was born Mary Isabel Catherine Bernadette O'Brien in West Hampstead in North London in 1939.
The O'Brien family were war refugees who, like many, many people of their generation, briefly moved out of London to Buckinghamshire during the war.
I think Dusty's family was very music-loving. There's stories about how her dad held her hand and would tap out different musical numbers and get her to guess what he was playing.
Dusty very early on wanted to be a singer, and particularly a vocalist. Age 12, she recorded herself singing When the Midnight Choo-Choo Leaves for Alabama.
When that midnight choo-choo leaves for Alabama, I'll be right there, I've got my fare.
A lot of Dusty Springfield's character traits and her problems with fame came back to her childhood. Yeah, her mother apparently used to throw food around, which is something that Dusty Springfield would then do.
After the war finished, then Mary was sent to a convent school. And again, she found that very difficult. She was someone with low self-esteem. She didn't like the way that she looked because she'd been told by her father that she wasn't attractive. She was clearly having very confused sexual feelings at this time. And all of these factors contributed to making her very unhappy. And this is where she really began to become obsessed by Billie Holiday, because Billie Holiday's shtick was pain. And this is what Mary, soon to be Dusty, absorbed.
She was a tomboy. She was a big football player, and she got the name Dusty from playing football and, you know, being sort of knocking around in the dust, I guess.
Dusty saw an advert for a singing group called the Lana Sisters and decided to apply. She got the role, changed her name to Shan, cut her hair, learned about makeup, actually realised, you know, what it was to be quite a girly girl, I think.
She learned many vocal skills. As part of the Lana Sisters, she learned how to harmonise, she learned how to duet, she learned how to take leads and sing backgrounds.
By 1960, Dusty had left the Lanas and she formed the Springfields with her brother and another friend, and they were a kind of a pop-folk trio.
At this point, they actually went off to Nashville in Tennessee, and here Dusty's sensibilities turned more towards the pop, country and folk sound that we would later know her for.
Trying to forget you, but somehow it seems.
The Springfields had hits. There was a song called Say I Won't Be There, but most importantly was Silver Threads and Golden Needles, because this was a hit in America, and I think it was the first time that an English band had had an American hit.
In November of 1963, Dusty released her first solo single, I Only Want to Be With You, and it brought some interesting new elements into the work that Dusty had done previously.
Her approach to it was very much influenced by what she'd heard in America. She went for this kind of Phil Spector wall of sound approach, and she was influenced by the bands that she loved, the Shirelles, the Exciters, those girl pop groups from the Motown kind of space of music that really hadn't kind of broken through in the UK. She was doing something very new in Britain.
The single was number 4 in the UK chart, then coinciding with Beatlemania and the British invasion, hit number 12 in the US.
It was a massive hit for her, and it was a huge outpouring of joy. It's still the definitive version of this fantastic song.
It was the beginning of her career, really, and it was also the beginning of her sound.
Wishing and hoping and thinking and praying, planning and dreaming each night of his charms that won't get you into his arms.
On her first album, there were no Dusty Springfield songs at all. It was a complete covers album. By her own admission, she wasn't a great songwriter. She was an interpreter.
A Girl Called Dusty, that was her British Invasion album. She was on the Ed Sullivan Show, which was the show that everybody watched.
She sold more records than any other Phillips artist in this period, and she became a big international star.
Dusty's version of Burt Bacharach's I Just Don't Know What to Do With Myself is a really important moment, I think, in her solo career. It went to number 3 in the UK.
I just don't know what to do with my time. I'm so lonesome for you, it's a crime. Going to a movie only makes me sad. Parties make me feel as bad.
It set the template for much of the great Dusty Springfield songs. It had a big arrangement. It was very bold. It was incredibly dramatic.
She somehow has a way of getting a different message out from the words than even the songwriter intended. She has this ability to kind of evoke this melancholy in it, and I think that was the key to her, her brilliance.
In 1964, the apartheid regime in South Africa was really not the top of anyone's global political interests, but it was a vicious regime. And when artists went over there, it insisted that they play to segregated audiences. To Dusty Springfield, who sounded like a black soul singer, this was anathema.
Dusty put it in her contract that she wouldn't play any segregated shows. She was like the first British artist to do this. It was a very brave thing to do at the time.
The South African government, naturally, were having none of that, and they instantly stopped the tour and deported her.
Dusty's second album, Everything's Coming Up Dusty, was quite an interesting choice of release. They didn't include any of the big singles on it because it was assumed that all her fans had already bought them. So instead, it was kind of a strange eclectic mix of different styles of music. There was show tunes on there. There was the Mexican traditional song La Bamba, which was one of her live favourites.
Dusty Springfield produced and arranged her own music, and she didn't take credit for it, which is quite strange. I can't believe, that if there's a strong female artist now, I can't believe that she would produce and arrange and not take credit.
She toured globally and she toured regularly, and this helped cement her position as a great vocalist of the era.
When I said I needed you, you said you would always stay.
Between 1964 and 1969, Dusty Springfield was voted the top British female artist each year. She was flooding the charts with hit singles. During this time, she had her own television show in the UK.
Don't you see?
In 1965, Dusty was in San Remo in Italy for the annual music festival, and she heard somebody singing a song called Che Non Vivo, which would eventually become You Don't Have to Say You Love Me, which is obviously one of Dusty's biggest hits. It was rewritten with new lyrics by her longtime friend and collaborator, Vicky Wickham.
She performed it at the Royal Variety Performance, which became a key moment in her career.
Dusty had become very aware of Motown in her American travels, but by 1965 it hadn't really taken off in Britain.
Vicky Wickham produced Ready, Steady, Go, and she started booking the Motown artists and getting them over from America. And Dusty Springfield presented them and introduced them. So Dusty Springfield is the missing link in the British soul scene.
So if you're looking to find love, you can share. All you gotta do is hold him and kiss him and love him and show him that you care.
You've got the look of love. It's on your face. The look that time can't erase.
Dusty's version of Burt Bacharach's The Look of Love is just sublime. It's so slow and sultry and sexy, and definitely stands out in that way in terms of looking at the pop hits of the 60s. There's no other track like it.
It's one of the slowest records you could ever hear, and she just oozes herself into it.
Hardly wait to hold you. Feel my arms around you. How long I have waited.
It was nominated for an Academy Award because of Casino Royale, but also it's an unusual pop hit. It's very, very slow. The chords are unusual. They're all sevenths. The feel is sultry. You know, it's not upbeat as such.
By 1967, when Dusty was hosting her second series of her TV show, it was still attracting decent audiences, but couldn't replicate the success of the first season.
Pop was going psychedelic. Things were changing. You know, Jimi Hendrix was on the scene. What I think was probably fantastic for her to get her going with this very striking image, which was not based on sexuality particularly, but based on glamour, really. It then, you know, it did trap her because, you know, fashions change, things became looser, and she was sort of trapped in this rather kind of Hollywood glamour siren look.
On her next two albums, Where Am I Going and Dusty Definitely, released in 1968 and 69 respectively, Dusty Springfield was moving, I suppose, more away from the straight-up pop of her debut album, and then also the pop, soul and Motown influence of her second album, Everything's Coming Up Dusty, and experimenting a lot more with the jazz music that was clearly her passion, and also her other passion, show tunes.
So although she was separate in a way from the kind of groovy scene of the late 60s, at the same time, she was representing things for so many people, because she had this ability to, you know, express really kind of everyday emotion and everyday suffering through these songs.
It's the way you make me feel the moment I am close to you. It's a feeling so unreal, somehow I can't believe it's true.
After signing with Atlantic Records, Dusty went to Memphis to try and recreate some of her favourite soul singers. She wanted to kind of reinvigorate her career by looking back to the people who inspired her. But once in the studio, her kind of neurosis and her nervousness took over, and she suddenly felt that there was so much pressure.
I close my eyes and count to 10, and when I open them, you're still here.
She was overwhelmed by recording in the same studio that one of her heroines, Aretha Franklin, had done much of her great work. When she opened her mouth and when she tried to sing, there was nothing there. She couldn't physically sing. And this caused enormous frustration for her and for her producers, who had the very bright idea of saying, maybe you should go to New York. So the vocals to Dusty in Memphis were recorded in New York. And of course, they were wonderful.
That album brought out the natural soul quality in her voice. Arif Mardin thought that she had a fantastic voice, and he used that voice to best advantage in fantastic songs. I mean, Son of a Preacher Man is an absolutely amazing song.
It immediately received great critical feedback in both the UK and the US, and has since been reassessed a number of times and is considered one of the greatest albums ever released.
God knows to my surprise, the only boy who could ever reach me was the son of a preacher man, the only one who could ever teach me. was the son of a preacher man. Yes, he was. He was. Oh, yes, he was.
The song had actually been turned down by Aretha Franklin, but it reached the top 10 in the UK and US for Dusty in 1968.
Son of a Preacher Man has become, I think, one of the best-known Dusty songs, partly because of its use in Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction. That association has really kind of elevated Dusty for a whole new audience.
When she signed to Atlantic, this is at the end of the 60s, she was going through a pretty hard personal time. She was very, very worried about being outed as a lesbian. She thought that would destroy her career. At the same time, she was in a relationship with Norma Tanego.
But back then, if she'd been outed as gay, it would have had a terrible effect on her career. So she wasn't being paranoid about this, although trying to hide the person that she was made her paranoid.
Dusty decided to kind of take a step back, and she became a bit of a recluse in California. But, you know, she still wanted to sing, and she kind of created this strange alter ego, Gladys Thong, who appeared on a number of different people's records. She even sang with Elton John. So she was still keeping her hand in, but keeping herself out of the spotlight.
The situation was worsened by the fact that in order to combat her anxieties about being outed, Dusty was self-harming, drinking heavily, using drugs and living an incredibly unstable lifestyle.
The early 70s, Dusty Springfield released a brand new me. It wasn't a brand new me. This was not a good time for her. She was becoming very, very reclusive. She'd split up with her girlfriend, Norma Tanego, and her record sales were declining. So she was in a very, very difficult situation. I don't think she really knew where she was going to go from there.
She was diagnosed as being bipolar after a nervous breakdown, and she had stints in a New York psychiatric hospital. But it was clear for all the diagnosis she received that there was nobody really helping her. And it wasn't because she was surrounded by cruel people, but people didn't really understand or have the capacity or ability to deal with the serious mental health issues that she was having at the time. And like her sexuality, she was a victim of the times.
Neil Tennant from the Pet Shop Boys was a massive fan of Dusty and cited Dusty in Memphis as one of his favourite ever albums. So the Pet Shop Boys approached her to sing on the track What Have I Done to Deserve This? She agreed, they released it, and it was a huge success. It completely turned around Dusty's career at that time, introduced her to a whole new generation, cemented her as a gay icon as well, and it just was, you know, the shot in the arm that her career needed.
What have I? Since you went away, I've been hanging around. I've been wondering why I'm feeling down.
That was the start of Dusty's musical rehabilitation, and it became a great hit. And again, it's a great song.
Following the success of their single together, the Pet Shop Boys and Dusty would collaborate again on 1989's Nothing Has Been Proved.
Dusty had her songs used in films all the way back to Casino Royale, right into Scandal, which was at the end of the 80s, and that was Nothing Has Been Proved. And I think the reason it works so well for film is because it's dramatic.
Vicky's got a story about the mirror and the cane. It may be false, it may be true, but nothing has been proved.
Dusty's 1990 album Reputation actually was really important in kind of a resurgence in her career. It was mainly produced by the Pet Shop Boys, and it did pretty well. It really kind of brought her back to this new generation and also showed that she was willing to move with the times.
Take your time and tell me why you lie. I realize that we've been found out.
It's much more dancey, upbeat, and reflective of that kind of period of the early 1990s.
By the time of 1995's A Very Fine Love, Dusty's moment had passed. But more seriously, just before the album was about to be released, she was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Wherever would I be without you? If I didn't have you. If I didn't have you.
In 1999, Dusty Springfield was due to get an OBE, but due to the fact that she was so severely ill, officials at Buckingham Palace actually gave a special dispensation and allowed her longtime friend and producer and collaborator, Vicky Wickham, to collect it on her behalf and take it to her, and there was a small presentation made in the hospital where Dusty was. And she actually passed away on the day that she was due to go to the palace and receive the award.
You don't own me. Don't say I can't go with other boys.
Dusty Springfield's legacy is just huge. I mean, on the one hand, the fact that she was so instrumental in bringing Motown to the UK and to British audiences, I think, you know, you can't underestimate how important she was in that. The voice transcends everything. When you listen to the records, it doesn't matter what she was like or who she was. That voice says everything.
She always had this ability to cut to the heart of human feeling, but it's show business. She did it in a way that was elegant and glamorous and wrapped up in ball gowns and a beautiful voice and everything else.